It is morning in LA and morning in America. I am your host, KC Phoenix, and this is my political thought or my morning political thought. All right, so as you already know, President Trump is ready to defund the cities of chaos. This is what has happened. And you know what? Before I go into that, one quick thing. I know we've been talking about Ted Wheeler a lot. It just so happens that someone from Antifa is running against Ted Wheeler for mayor. So that's a little side thing. And her name is, I want to say Sarah, if I'm not mistaken. I don't recall her last name, but I'm pretty sure her first name is Sarah. And I looked at one of her campaign ads, and it made her look very Susie Homemaker like, which I feel she's anything but. But she has said that she is part of Antifa, and Antifa isn't this violent and group of anarchists. So I'm curious how that's going to play out, especially since Ted Wheeler doesn't seem to be liked on any side right now. I, if she wins, Antifa will have an ally because they'll have one of their own as the mayor of Portland, which is pretty interesting. Now, speaking of Portland and cities of chaos, President Trump told Bill Barr to make a list of all the cities that have told their police to stand down or have defunded their police. Any type of defunding that they've practiced or started with their law enforcement, President Trump has said, okay, for these cities, we want to see about not giving them any federal dollars, period. He hasn't done it yet. He wants to see what the options are, and that's what he's attempting to do. Bill Barr is making the list. That directive was given to Bill Barr not too long ago. When President Trump and Bill Barr went to Kenosha, one thing Bill Barr has said that I have found interesting, it was 175 or 72 people were arrested. And Bill Barr has said more than half of the people arrested were people who were out of the city or out of the state, out of town, that had flown in to create the chaos, create the anarchy. And due to everything that's been happening in the cities, that's why President Trump is saying, okay, I'm ready to defund. The cities that are at the top of the list, when President Trump gave the directive to Bill Barr, of course, Portland, where the riots have been going on, I don't know what the day is now because I hear some people say it's 80 days. I heard somebody say recently it was 90 days. And then I just heard someone say yesterday it was 100 days. So we've lost count of the days of riots that have been happening in Portland. But Portland is one of the cities at the top of the list. Another city at the top of the list is Washington, D.C. President Trump put Washington, D.C. at the top of the list, too. And speaking of Washington, D.C., they were looking to remove and change and update the history of the monuments, the Washington Monument, the Jefferson Memorial, and all this stuff. Come to find out, the people in Washington, D.C. are not happy about that. So now the mayor of Washington, D.C. and her crew have backed down from their plans to redo certain things when it comes to the monuments and the names of things related historically to Washington, D.C. So she's backed off, the mayor's backed off for now due to the resistance. And I hate using that word resistance because when you think of resistance, you think of the other side. But due to the resistance of the people in Washington, D.C., they're like, okay, you can't, no. Not saying that the mayor of D.C. won't try to do it later on down the line. But as for now, the mayor and her crew that handle that, they've backed off. As for the other city that is at the top of the list that President Trump has put at the top of the list, obviously New York City. And him and Governor Cuomo have been trading barbs back and forth about that. Governor Cuomo was complaining about President Trump threatening to take away federal funding and saying that it's not legal. And then, of course, President Trump started bringing up the nursing home incident of how 11,000 people died because of Governor Cuomo and his mismanagement of nursing homes during the China Wuhan virus. So that is what's stirring right now. But it's Portland, Washington, D.C., and New York City. Those three cities are at the top of the list to be defunded, along with others. Because as I said before, the directive that President Trump gave to Bill Barr is that any city that where it's found out that they told their police to stand down, or they've started the practice of defunding their police department, those cities need to go on the list. So President Trump can then forward that list to another department, and then they will see if they can legally defund all the cities on the list. So Bill Barr is in charge of creating that list right now, is what's happening. I believe it's pretty much legal when it comes to federal dollars, especially if they're not being used. And if I'm not mistaken, President Trump has threatened to yank federal dollars before. So I don't see how it'll be that big of an issue if he does it this time, and they can go ahead and sue. But due to how everything's looking in the media and with the polls, even though I don't really like the polls, where the polls are siding with the people who are saying we don't want this chaos in our city. If President Trump were to say, okay, I'm defunding Portland, I'm defunding Oregon, or I'm defunding Portland, you're not getting federal dollars because of this. And if Oregon or Portland decide they want to fight the Trump administration in court over the funding, that's only going to make them look bad in front of everybody, because then it's going to be in the news. It's going to be a case that they're fighting them to get dollars, but the reason they're not receiving the dollars is because they haven't been funding their police, and they've been allowing anarchy to fester and metastasize and get worse and worse and worse. So I can't imagine them fighting over federal dollars, because it will make them look bad. If it was over something else, like immigration, which that's another thing, that's what it was. I told you I do most things from memory. Like 98% of my show is from memory. If it was over something like immigration, where when President Trump had threatened to not give federal dollars to cities that were not working with ICE, that would be a little different, because the narrative would not necessarily be on the president's side. But because pretty much the narrative is on the president's side, and it's hard for the media to spin this in the other side's favor, it will not look good for them to be seen in a tug of war over federal dollars based on something that started due to them allowing anarchy to happen in the first place and chaos to happen in the first place. So I'm pretty sure things will get better soon. I really, really am. And if things don't get better soon, the president's poll numbers are going to keep going up. And I don't think they were low in the first place. But that's another story and another thought for another day. But I do believe that he should defund all the cities that are telling their police to stand down, all the cities that are talking about defunding their police, which it is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. All of those cities should be defunded, period. It's like, if you're going to defund your police, then you don't need federal dollars, because you don't need your police. Okay, fine. You don't need federal dollars. That's just how I feel about it. Other people may feel differently, but this is how I feel during my morning political thought. And that's pretty much all I have related to what I'm talking about. Obviously, Nancy Pelosi is still catching heat. And by the way, that salon owner, she's receiving death threats now. People have been calling, threatening to burn down her salon, and also doing death threats. And they've been leaving bad reviews on Yelp too for her, which she had been there for 12 years. And she more than likely will go ahead and close down the salon due to all of the hate that has come in after that video of Nancy Pelosi getting her hair done with no mask, which the mask thing, I'm not big on that with Nancy Pelosi. My thing is that within the city of San Francisco, indoor services have been banned, but Nancy Pelosi was allowed to have indoor service. And the thing that really, really irritates me with Nancy Pelosi, it would be different if she was one of those struggling Congress people who isn't worth that much. Nancy Pelosi is a multimillionaire over and over again. I forgot what her net worth is, but I know it's in the tens of millions for sure. And if you're worth tens of millions of dollars, you can hire someone to come to wherever you are and do your hair for a blowout. You don't need to take a trip into San Francisco or wherever and do that. You just don't need to do it. But whatever. So that's all I have for today. This is pretty short. Just want to let you know that President Trump is definitely looking to defund all the cities of chaos, in addition to doing the arrest, which have happened. And if you didn't get a chance to watch that brief press conference, or should I say meeting, that he had where Bill Barr was with him when they were in Kenosha, be sure to check it out, because there was some interesting information in that, because he did fund the state of Michigan. He offered, I believe it was $42 million. I know it was 40 something. I'm pretty sure it was $42 million for the state, as well as other funding for the small businesses that have been affected due to the riots within the state. So I'm really glad that President Trump is out there in front of people showing, hey, I'm here to help. I want to help during all this chaos. And that he's been offering help to these cities and to these states. And certain cities and states have been rejecting his help over and over and over again. And he hasn't been sending in stormtroopers, like some people say, because he hasn't invoked the Insurrection Act. Anytime federal troops have been involved, it's usually been because they're protecting federal property. But just to send in the National Guard or any other type of federal troops, just to send them in to stop the riots, that has not been done. And that is misinformation put out by the media. But that's all I have. Just wanted to let you know that's happening. I thank you for listening to my morning political thought, and for supporting the show and watching and liking and sharing and subscribing. You can follow thepurpleelephantShow.com is the main podcasting platform. The Purple Elephant Show on Parler, so we can parlay. The Purple Elephant Show on Instagram. Facebook.com/The Purple Elephant Show. Don't forget to swing by and give a like. And at RealTPES on Twitter. And yeah, that's all I have. Thank you so much. Be blessed.